What does it really take to be a pioneer? To walk into spaces where no one like you has gone before? To break down the cultural narratives we've inherited about who we're supposed to be? And to reinvent what's possible for yourself and for generations of women who come after? Today's guest knows that story intimately because she has been the first in so many arenas, from winning multiple daytime Emmys to launching a groundbreaking platform for Latinas in midlife. And if you've ever felt the pull to reinvent yourself or break barriers in your own life, you're in the right place. Welcome back to Pleasure in the Pause, the podcast dedicated to empowering midlife women to connect to their bodies, pleasure, and power in perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. I am your host, Gabriela Espinosa, and it is truly my pleasure to be here with you today. This episode is especially meaningful because we're closing out Hispanic Heritage Month and stepping into World Menopause Awareness Month. And today's conversation is the perfect bridge between these two moments of celebration and advocacy. I'm thrilled to be speaking with Gaby Natale, a triple daytime Emmy-winning journalist, best-selling author, leadership speaker, and entrepreneur. Gaby is known for her message of reinvention and what she calls the pioneer spirit, the courage to see opportunity before the world catches up and the boldness to act on it. She is the first Latina to win 3 consecutive daytime Emmys, the first Hispanic author published by HarperCollins Leadership, and has been recognized by People magazine as one of the 25 most powerful Latinas and by Success magazine as a woman of influence. Gaby is also a breast cancer survivor, an official ambassador for Susan G. Komen, and the founder of Menopause.com, the first bilingual femtech platform dedicated to Latinas navigating midlife transitions. Her work has reached millions through media, her best-selling book, The Virtuous Circle, and her global speaking, inspiring audiences from the United Nations to Fortune 500 boardrooms. In our conversation, Gaby shares her journey from Argentina to the US, the lessons of breaking barriers in media, how breast cancer and medically induced menopause reshaped her path, and why she's so passionate about elevating the conversation around menopause, representation, and women's health. So let's dive in and welcome the extraordinary Gaby Natale. Welcome, Gaby. I'm so honored to have you with me today to close out Hispanic Heritage Month and open Menopause Awareness Month. Your story and your work embody resilience, reinvention, and breaking barriers, qualities so many of us are hungry to hear about. So welcome to Pleasure in the Pause.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm just realizing that our names almost match. So I'm Gabriela with only one L. You are Gabriela with 2 L's. And our bookcases almost match because they're both green, kind of in the similar shade. So we are matchy in more than one level, Gabriela.
Yeah, we're in sync today. I love that. We met earlier in the year in Dallas when I heard that you were stepping into the space of menopause. I thought, oh my goodness, what a force to be stepping into this space. I was so excited to hear all about your story and how you stepped into the menopause space and founded Menopause.com, which we'll get into today. But let's start with your personal story. You came from Argentina, built an extraordinary career here in the US. I know that you believe in breaking barriers and you preach what you embody every step of the way. What was that journey like for you, navigating the challenges, building your path, and ultimately achieving the success you've built over the time that you've been here in the States?
Well, Gabriela, for me, it's always about a message that I love to share with audiences, with global corporations, with the women that are going through midlife. And it's the concept of embracing the pioneer spirit. And what does it mean? It means doing your own path. Sometimes we are too busy paying attention to what everyone else is doing. And I call that the emulator mindset. So we're all trying to emulate what is she doing, what is he doing, and just copying each other. And the truth is, we can be perfectly happy having an emulator mindset all our life, if that's what we want to do. But here's the thing: emulators don't move the world forward. They tend to perpetuate the status quo. And too many times, the status quo is not enough. We crave more. And that's why that's been a commonality in my journey. Even when I arrived and I was 24 and I arrived in the United States where I had no friends or family to start fresh without a security network. And then starting my career as a communicator, I came with a master's degree. And then little by little, building the foundations that took me later to win 3 daytime Emmys. First Latina to win 3 daytime Emmys back to back. And the first Latina to be published by the leadership division of HarperCollins. And now, as a speaker, there's a lot of firsts as well. And as you mentioned, my latest venture, menopausia.com, is a big first because it's the first platform, bilingual platform for all things perimenopause and menopause. So I would say, if you ask me from the beginning of, as you said, in the beginning of the journey, in the beginning of your journey until now, what was this invisible thread that unites everything? I think it is the need to break barriers, the need to believe in our own vision even before we have the results to validate it.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. That's just remarkable. Everything. You were a first in so many things, right? And you walked into so many rooms of influence using your voice, often the only one like you, right? You talk about that pioneer spirit, but what was your internal voice saying to you, your internal beliefs? Because so many of us are held back, as you mentioned, into just following the status quo. But what was it that was driving you? And what wisdom can you share with Latinas or other women who may find themselves in that situation today, wanting to start something new?
I would say my inner dialogue is not that I'm not scared. I am terrified sometimes. But inside, I feel like living with not knowing what would have happened if I made that call, if I took that project, if I, you know, just today I just wrapped up an interview for a documentary that you are, one of the consultants there. And just this was also a little bit of facing my fears because it's a documentary around menopause and pleasure. And really, I've done interviews where I talked about many topics, but not one where I talked about menopause and pleasure. And it was one of those things, like other situations in my life where life puts you in a situation to think, okay, am I going to take this invitation from life to live a new experience and just don't close myself to discussing more openly topics that are personal? Or, am I going to just say no and live with what could have been once, in 2 years when the documentary opens and premieres, and I'm saying, I was the one who they called and I chickened out.
I can totally relate to that. I think sometimes we carry some type of cultural baggage that informs those narratives. And I felt exactly the same way when I stepped into this space of menopause and female sexuality and joining the Hot team. Hot, by the way, for those who are listening, is a bold and funny documentary that's in the making. And it documents the changes women go through as they're navigating menopause. And yeah, you're going to be a powerful voice in that. And for me, it could have been like, oh my gosh, that internal cultural narrative for me was my mother. What are people going to think? ¿Qué van a pensar? ¿Qué van a pensar? ¿Qué van a decir la gente? Do those cultural narratives ever seep into your mind?
Well,
and what do you say to those narratives?
Well, for me, in this particular case, I was extra cautious because I didn't want it to expose anyone, other than myself in a way. So I asked around, like, do you feel comfortable if, I'm doing this interview? And everybody was super supportive around me, my husband, and I was surprised about my parents. My parents told me, you should do it.
Oh, so you asked your parents.
I shared it with my parents, like, what do you think? I got invited to this documentary, and my parents were like, you should do it. And I was like, Mom, I'm surprised by your answer, And she said, like, hey, hija, te pensas que tienes 20 años. Like, hey, do you think you have 20 years? You have 47. Come on, I'm not going to discover anything new.
I love that. I love that you checked in with your parents. So, what would you say to other Latinas or women who come from, have different countries of origin as their cultural heritage, who are sometimes battling with those cultural narratives that we want to respect them. And I love that you called your mother.
Yeah, we were talking about all the things that were going on, and I said I have this project, and they also invited me to be a part of this documentary,
Uh-huh.
which includes not just menopause, but menopause and pleasure. And like my parents were like, "You should do it." So
Oh my gosh, I love that. So that message to anyone who's listening, you should just do it, okay? Check in with your parents if you want to, but
your parents may be more open-minded than you thought in the beginning. They don't care as much.
I love that. I haven't shared with my parents or my mother that I'm doing the hot documentary. So I think I'll take the lead from you and be brave and share it with them. I love that. You also talk about reinvention. Reinvention is something you speak about often, right? And it seems like it's something that you've been constantly doing throughout your career. What does it mean to you personally, and how have you practiced it through different chapters of your life?
I think reinvention for me is associated with not limiting myself. And I always say that discomfort is our wake up call to pioneer, to reinvent ourselves or to create our next project, etc. For me, early in my career, the discomfort to start reinventing, well, there are several chapters of discomfort, but there's one when I graduated in Argentina with a master's degree, and there were riots in the street, a big crisis with 5 presidents in 10 days, and I spent 2 years unemployed. So when I had the opportunity, a job offering to come to the United States, I took it. But first, it was for that first reinvention of becoming an immigrant. The discomfort was being in a country where there was a lot of instability, 20% unemployment, riots in the street. And so that forged the immigrant in me because I expanded my view to different possibilities. Then there was another stance of discomfort that was another reinvention, and it was the reinvention of becoming an entrepreneur.
Mm.
So in the year 2006, my green card was approved, and at the same time, I was working as a news anchor and reporter in West Texas in the market of Midland, Odessa. And I realized that there were so many stories that I wanted to tell and many things that I wanted to share, but you had to ask for permission, and there's a news director, there's somebody else who needs to approve it. And at the same time, at least at that time, I felt that being a Latina on camera in local news, the media industry in local news only allowed me to embody two media personas. One, Gabriela, was the hypersexualized Latina, the one that is the
Mm.
reporter that is usually assigned to entertainment and weather with a tight dress and the short skirt during the weather. And that was not me. I felt very uncomfortable with that. And then the other media persona was the formal news anchor with a deep voice in other news. And I was not that either because I'm very spontaneous. And we as women, we are multidimensional. And sometimes they want to put us, in a certain box. So I realized that I could make it in local news, but I would have to mold myself into fitting in one of these two media personas, the sexy or the formal. And in doing so, I will have to erase the parts of my personality that I like the most. And I always like to say, I don't want to be a wannabe. I want to be me. And
Mm.
that was my motivation for becoming an entrepreneur. It was a creative motivation. It was not really even a financial motivation. It was a creative motivation of being able to express who I was fully on camera and at the same time being able to share the stories that I wanted to share with the audience.
Oh, wow. Hearing you speak, I think about the power of sharing your own story, right? Sharing with the world, this is who I am. You can't put me in a box. So often when I'm speaking to midlife women or women in general, we feel we have to fit into a certain box. This is my identity and I have to fit
That's
into
so
that box.
oppressive.
And then we spend so much time. I felt the same thing, kind of mourning, different parts of ourselves. And then we get to midlife and we feel, okay, I'm going to start unpacking those parts of myself that I kind of tucked away. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that reinvention with so many midlife women. We're a whole universe. And I'm seeing it all around me. Women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, just taking that bold step and really saying, this is who I really am. This is who I really am. And I love that you, from a very early stage in your career, developed that reinvention from and walked that talk.
And Gabriela, and I credit that decision, to embrace all of who I was with everything that happened next, with the recalibrating, who I thought I was and what I thought it was possible for me was the key for everything that happened next, because the trajectory of my media career started to grow. We won 3 Emmys. Then I became a published author, then a speaker, but everything started with that deliberate decision to recalibrate my own belief system and said, no, I'm not the sexy, I'm not the formal news anchor, I'm Gaby, and I'm going to
Yeah.
be Gaby even at work, and I'm going to be Gaby even on camera. And that
Wow.
was the whole change for being happier, of course, because when you are compartmentalizing yourself, it's hard to be spontaneous, it's hard to be relaxed. You're always second guessing yourself. And at the same time, your most creative work and your happiest days are not going to happen as a byproduct of telling yourself that you're undeserving of good things in
Mm.
life.
So being true to yourself is what I hear
Mhm.
you say over
Mhm.
and over again. You also wrote about reinvention and transformation in your best-selling book, The Virtuous Circle. I know there you share habits and mindsets that fuel success and transformation. You've interviewed hundreds of successful people. Can you share some of those habits and mindsets, and how have those principles helped you navigate, the bigger transitions, the next transitions that you had in your life, like breast cancer, like surgically induced menopause, and how would you recommend women in midlife apply them to reinvent themselves?
The virtuous circle has a very simple premise, and is what sets these super achievers apart, especially the ones who don't come from particular background where they had access or they had wealth, but they achieved remarkable things in life. And so I interviewed so many of them, and so the question was, what do they all have in common? Because they had different nationalities, different professionals, different professions, different everything. And so I recognized there were 7 archetypes that live in all of us. Everybody is capable of activating them, so to speak. But I recognized there were a commonality in all these people. And I'm going to mention a few of them. To each one of them corresponds an action. So the first one is the dreamer, the one that allows us to visualize. The second one is the architect, which is the one that allows us to plan. The third one is the maker, which is the one that allows us to execute. A lot of people dream, plan, but never execute. Then you have the next one, which is the apprentice, which is the one that allows us to perfect our craft, because nobody got to that level of excellence, those super achievers, without perfecting their craft. And then I always joke, once you perfect your craft, what happens? And sometimes what happens is that nothing happens because the world is still not paying attention, even if you perfected your craft. So you need the next archetype, which is the warrior, which is the one that allows you to persevere when tough times come. And then I always tell people that when the things you learned with the apprentice and the perseverance you have with the warrior come across an opportunity, because sooner or later we come across opportunity, there is where you reach your goal and you become the champion. And the champion is the next one. But here's the thing, the champion is not the end. Because what do we ask every champion? I ask every champion. I ask them, champion, what are you using your achievements for? What are you using these achievements for? If you're using your achievements for something bigger than yourself, then you're going to inspire and you're going to become the next one, which is the leader. The leader is the one who inspires. And it's called the virtuous circle because with your next idea, with your next project, where do you go? Back to the beginning, to still dreaming, to being a dreamer, to being an architect. So it starts again because the only constant in life is change and evolution. And I feel like all these 7 archetypes that I mentioned are present in all of us. Who doesn't dream? Who doesn't plan? But it's also a tool for self discovery because I know, for example, some of these archetypes are very strong in me. Like the warrior, I persevere. I am good at being a warrior. But the one that I know I'm kind of failing sometimes, believe it or not, is the dreamer. Because when things don't go my way, I disconnect from my inner dreamer. I have negative dialogue. So it's hard for me to visualize. And so because I have this tool and I can recognize, what comes natural to me and what takes more work, I can help myself for my next goal or for my next thing, knowing that maybe I'm disconnecting too much with this archetype or this other archetype.
So it's a framework
Uh-huh.
for reinvention. And so as you journey through all of those archetypes, do you provide journaling prompts? How do people know how to journey from one archetype to another and really embody that and make it part of their own mission?
Each one of those archetypes is a full chapter of the book. So when you read the book, you're going to see in each one of these ones. So there's a whole one dedicated for the dreamer. So you're going to have your exercises, you're going to have interviews with dreamers, you're going to have techniques for visualizing. And so in the next one, you're going to have the techniques for planning because it's the architect and who is a good example of an architect. And actually, the structure of every chapter is the same, just with a different archetype and personal stories because it's not 100% like a biography, but there are scenes from my life that can be useful to illustrate what is a warrior. So moments in my life where I had to persevere, or what is a dreamer, moments in my life where I had to really visualize something that was not within my reach at that moment, at
Mm.
least in appearance.
Yeah, it's such a powerful framework. And I feel that it makes me realize that sometimes reinvention isn't necessarily a choice. It's something that we just step into. Reinvention is
Uh-huh.
there for the taking. And having this beautiful framework that you talk about, it just facilitates that journey of really bravely and courageously stepping into that spirit of reinvention and pioneering that you talk about. You use that framework as you stepped into other challenges. You're a breast cancer survivor. I know an ambassador of the Susan G. Komen Foundation. What did that experience teach you about reinvention, resilience, and self advocacy? And really, you're also about the importance of raising your voice, really to say, this is who I am, this is what I want. Yeah, what did that experience teach you about the importance of women raising their voices in healthcare?
I've always been a believer of sharing my journey. I just didn't know my journey was going to include surviving breast cancer. So I think it was in a way because I've always shared, in my advocacy work as an immigrant, as a woman. So when I went through the diagnosis of breast cancer and I realized, well, things went well. I'm still here, I'm going to be able to make it. The natural question is how am I going to communicate this and also communicate this in a way where I can make a positive impact in my life? I was proactive and I contacted Susan G. Komen and I told them, this is who I am, this is what happens to me, and this is how I feel I can be of service to the community and also to your organization. And they have been keeping me busy. Like next Monday, I have to go to an interview with NBC Telemundo. So there's always this part of also knowing that I'm not just a breast cancer survivor, but I was a caregiver for my mother twice because my mother had a recurrence
Mm.
this year. So I truly know the value of prevention. I know it firsthand with me and with my mother twice. So I know that this information and really telling women to take it seriously, to do not reschedule those appointments and to make the appointments, that truly saves lives because science continues to advance. We have more and more tools. And if we do our part for early detection and mammograms and we pay attention, then we have a much better chance than if things get discovered down the road.
And what tools would you say helped you get through your breast cancer journey?
I think, I don't know, I was so, it sounds weird, but I was kind of centered. I don't know why. I
Mhm.
think when life puts you in difficult situations, sometimes you get more still because I was, I think, quite harmonious. But then I heard the Princess of England, who went through cancer as well, 1 week or
Catherine?
two. Catherine, yes, that's brain fog. There you go.
I lived in the UK, so I know
Yes,
of her well.
yes. So Catherine said, when you go through cancer, you are focused on the next appointment, and you're
Mhm.
focused on the journey, and you're focused on doing all the things that you have to do. But when the treatment, or at least the active part of the treatment, finishes, that's when you need more help in the emotional side. And she said that's when she
Mm.
looked for professional help because that's when you deal with your emotions. Because when you're in the treatment, there's not a lot of time to deal with your emotions. You have to go to the medical appointments, you have to make decisions, there's surgeries. If you have chemotherapy, there's the chemotherapy sessions that you have to go, etc. And I could relate a lot with her because during the active treatment, I was so centered, like a yogi. And then when the treatment finished, I feel like that was when I started really processing all my different emotions. And
Mm.
at the same time, I had medically induced menopause. So I was always going not through just the emotions, but the symptoms, because the menopause was here and it was very real. When it is medically induced, the good thing is that you know what's happening to you.
Did you feel prepared for it?
No, no, I wasn't prepared.
Did you it was a shock. I know, like, it's always a shock for everyone. But you knew you were gonna go into medically induced menopause. They
I
told you.
mean, so they told me this is due to your age, this is very likely to happen, and now it's been more than a year without periods. So I'm officially now in
Mhm.
menopause. The chances were very high, but when you're doing a treatment, really all your focus is on the treatment and if things are going to go fine. And then once you finish the treatment and you start focusing on quality of life, is when you start, you know, acknowledging the menopause, the symptoms that are happening all at the same time, the hot flashes, the insomnia, mood swings, and different things, the vaginal dryness, everything is happening at the same time. And if it is a medically induced menopause, more than likely your symptoms are going to be more severe than, in a natural transition. It's not guaranteed, but it's very likely. So that's when I started doing my research. I was not, you asked me if I was prepared. I was not prepared, but I was extra motivated because I had all the symptoms at once. And what I realized is that there's information, but sometimes it's scattered, sometimes it's contradictory, especially for a breast cancer survivor. Which therapies can I be a good candidate for? Some people say A, some people say B. There's a gray area. There's new research coming. So it was kind of confusing. The information was scattered. Then not every piece of information was information that was reliable. And that's why I thought to myself, Gabi, if you are an educated woman and a journalist, as somebody who is trained to research information and discern between good information and not that great information, and you're having a hard time doing all this research, there must be a lot of other women out there who are going through the same. And also, in the bilingual world, because my initial research was in English, but when I started looking for information in Spanish, there was even less information.
And out of that was birthed menopausia.com. You created menopausia.com. So menopausia for English speakers is the Spanish word for menopause.
The actual word.
The actual word, yes. And you found the domain and you took it. I love that. You created menopausia.com, the first bilingual femtech platform for Latinas. Your tagline, I love the website, by the way. It's so
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Your tagline is menopause now has a home, but it's in Spanish. La menopausia ya tiene un hogar.
Uh-huh.
What
It's
is
in both languages. You can have it in English or in Spanish.
Oh, you can toggle between the two. Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. So menopause now has a home. What inspired you to start it, and what kind of home will it be for women?
Well, for me, it was very important, like a home, that it was a beautiful home. We were very,
Mm.
very intentional in not echoing and perpetuating the misleading and depressive images we saw were used to portray women in menopause.
Oh my
So,
gosh, they're everywhere, aren't they?
yes. I saw so many that now I have like a catalog, because you have the ones that are the women fanning themselves. That's one. The other one is holding your forehead like this. What a disaster. Them hand in the forehead. And there's another one that I'm seeing that is like pinching yourself in the belly to check out the fat,
My
the
goodness.
midsection. So, no, please, those are not the images you're going to find in menopausia.com. We are fabulous women. We are vibrant. And the idea that's all we are, symptoms that we have to manage, it's an outdated idea. We're body, mind, and soul. That's why our blog has three anchors: feel good, look good, and the good life. Because even
Mm.
if you manage your symptoms, if you don't feel you have a good life ahead, what's the point in even managing your symptoms if you feel that what's coming up is like the worst that can happen in your life? And also, it's not realistic, because what we know is that menopause coincides with the highest achievements in women's careers and their highest earning potential. It's when they fulfill their highest earning potential. So why are we showing women who are much older than the 51 years old, which is the average for women in menopause? For Latinas, it's 48, so even younger. So why are we showing images that are not accurate in age? And also images of women where all they are doing is losing in life. And women in menopause, they're not losing in life. And at the same time, they are the ones who make the decisions at home. So not only they're not losing in life, this segment that so many are underestimating is the segment that holds the wallet for the whole household. So,
Exactly. We are lots more than our symptoms. And I love that you show that on menopausia.com. It is like stepping into a beautiful home, pretty much like the beautiful green office that you're in right now. And you step into menopausia.com and you're like, this is possible. I can become empowered with knowledge, which is so important. I can find resources to help me, products to help me, and all the education in one place. I love that you've made it bilingual. Representation matters. So many Latinas have felt invisible and left out of the menopause conversations. It is a very big issue that I bring up with so many platforms, and just kind of perpetuates the misinformation, the stigma that we grow up with around aging and menopause. Why do you think representation is so critical, and how do bilingual platforms like yours begin to shift the narrative?
well, for starters, this is the only bilingual platform focused on perimenopause and menopause that, at least to my knowledge, we have right now. So for me, it was no-brainer to create it, because I do believe we have to create and put in the world the things that we need but we cannot find. And the lack of information was so big, not just in English, but also in Spanish, in both languages, that, for example, we have our Meno Shop. The Meno Shop is a curated e-commerce store where you have a lot of solutions for women in midlife going through hormonal transitions, perimenopause, and menopause. But instead of having a traditional approach where you look for the products in terms of your usual categories. So let's say supplements, cream, this and that. Since the need is so big, the lack of information is so huge, we don't know what we don't know. So that's why we created a Mena shop that is searchable by symptom. So instead
Mm.
of thinking, do I need a supplement? It's like I'm having freaking hot flashes every day. What's in it for me? So you can see a whole variety of products from cooling sheets to supplements to whatever, and the same thing for, let's say, intimate lubrication, or the same thing for sleep, because sometimes we know what the problem is, but we have no clue about the solution or even what products exist that can make our life easier.
I love the Menno shop. I did take a look, and so many amazing products there. And yeah, they're categorized so well by symptom. It's not confusing at all. In the Latino culture, conversations, as we talked about earlier, around sexuality, aging, and menopause can still feel taboo, right? So we want more Latinas talking about this, right? We need to open up the conversation. What advice would you give to Latinas who want to start breaking those barriers, whether that's with the family, with a partner, or in the doctor's office?
We have to embody the message that we want in the world. We have to embody. So if we want to send a message to the world that women in midlife and women going through menopause are vibrant or outspoken, we cannot change maybe the whole world, but we can change ourselves. So maybe, you know what, be transparent, and you can start referring to it as something natural. And we are seeing the change, Gabriela, slowly, but it's happening even in corporate America. Our first corporate client was Microsoft, who hired menopausia.com even before we launched for education, because people in the workplace need to know that maybe their jefa, their boss, was having a hot flash, and they were fortunate enough to have a jefa that was speaking about it out loud and said, you know what? I need more cold. I need more cold weather in this room. And so we're seeing, especially intertwined with discussions around wellness. So it's starting to happen. Of course, we're behind in terms of legislation. We're behind in terms of diversity in clinical trials for menopause. We're behind in many things. There's room for growth, but I do see the conversation is shifting. And going back to your question about Latinas, I feel like it comes to us natural. Like, of course, we're not a monolith, as you know.
Mhm.
Latinas, we come from different ethnicities, different nationalities. Some are English dominant, Spanish dominant, different immigration and socioeconomic status, different access to health. And that shapes our experience in the menopause transition. It's not the same not to have access to health than to have access to top health. It's not the same to have a language barrier than to speak fluent English. So I think at the core of it is that we know that we as Latinas, not everybody knows it, but it's good for us to start learning our facts. Our transition lasts 2 years more compared to white women. So for white women, the menopause transition is around 6 years and a half. For Latina women, it's around 8 years and a half. So that means 2 whole more years that if you have symptoms, you are going to have to manage those symptoms. So the advice is empower yourself with education, empower yourself with knowing that you have to normalize these conversations at least around you. This is something that is affecting not just their well-being, their rest, because they wake up at 3 a.m. and they don't know what is happening to them. Some other women, they think they have early Alzheimer and it's just brain fog. So empower yourself with the education, normalize these conversations around you, or at least start in the medical office. There's a saying that says, calladita te ves más bonita. No,
Mhm.
calladita no te ves más bonita. So you don't look better silent. That's what it says, that saying. So you have to advocate for yourself, whether it's the medical office or your own bedroom. You have to have those conversations where if you're having painful sex, you have to come forward with it, not, suffer in silence, because there's so many solutions, so many products, so many things that can help you recover that area of your life. I've talked, Gabriela, with women who told me that they have been avoiding dating for 4 years, breast cancer survivors,
Mm,
because of the painful sex.
yeah,
So this is something that it's not talked enough, but it's affecting a lot of women
yeah.
and their significant others.
Yeah, not talking about it is harming us more. That
Mhm.
silence is literally killing us. And so I love that you speak so much about self advocacy. I think that's a huge step, especially and for women in the Latina community, because we have been told, yeah, it's better to not make a fuss,
Yes.
be a nice girl. And there is also, I feel, in the Latino community, this reverence for medicine from doctors, right? For
Yes.
authority,
How
right?
am
So,
I going to challenge, how a
yes.
simple mortal, me, how am I going to challenge the incredible knowledge of a doctor? But Gabriela, we know that women here in the US, they have to go to 4, even 5 different doctors until they get the solutions that they need in terms of menopause release.
And speaking not only to the doctor, but speaking with other women, right? So I love that menopause.com focuses on community. What is that going to look like? So for someone who is seeking community and finding other women to know that they are not alone, what is that going to look and feel like for someone who goes onto menopause.com?
So we have a forum, let's say like a Reddit style, where you can register and you can write your comments, interact with other people. And the reason why we included that was because we did a lot of social listening in Facebook groups, both in English and in Spanish. And we realized some women felt super proud about their menopause journey and were sharing everything, whether it's symptoms, solutions, or just how empowered they feel in this new chapter of their life. And there were others who, les da vergüenza. So some of them, they feel ashamed. And even in those Facebook groups, they incorporated a functionality where you can share a comment, but your name is going to remain anonymous. Many women needed the tips, suggestion, information, but they were so terrified to reveal certain aspects of their lives that they don't want for them to be public, that those Facebook groups had to incorporate the anonymous thing. So those are things that we see. And we see that women, they give a lot of reassurance to each other in these type of communities and these type of forums. But what we also notice is that sometimes, they give each other medical advice that is not medical advice from doctors.
Yes, yes. So you're
That
going to bring those medical experts to
exactly,
menopause.com.
exactly, because we have 3 pillars. So the first pillar is information that you can trust. And right now we have our blog, which has 3 sections: look good, feel good, the good life, because we don't think about women as just symptoms that we have to manage. So it's a 360 approach: feel good, look good, the good life. And then the second pillar is community, as I said, the forum where women can exchange messages with each other. And the third one is the solutions, so the Meno shop. But the idea is that we tap into the knowledge, the resources, and the expertise. That's the important thing, the expertise of people who are specialists. Because we've been seeing in those, while we did those social listening, we've been seeing that too many times people tell each other, do this or do that, and it's a recipe for disaster.
What an amazing resource, Gabby. Wow. I am so proud of what you've created. As you look ahead, what legacy do you hope to create through your work at menopause.com, through your work as a menopause advocate?
My hope, and of course, this is not a job that is done alone. We are a movement, Gabriela. I
Mhm.
am newbie in this movement, but we're a movement. But my hope is that we, working together, menopausia.com and the whole movement, we accomplished the goal of being the last generation that goes through menopause with shame attached to it. I don't want the next generation to go through it and to have to pretend nothing is happening when they are working or when they are at home. I was just in an interview saying, like, imagine going to your job and you are pregnant and you're pretending you're not pregnant and everybody's pretending you're not pregnant. That would be crazy. That would be crazy because
Absolutely.
your hormones are crazy, your life is changing, so many things are changing. So why do we do that to ourselves for menopause?
Mhm. Absolutely. Breaking the silence and normalizing the conversation and normalizing the experience, releasing all of the shame. I love that. And that's what menopausia.com truly does. It really is a home to really
Mhm.
welcome you into this next stage of life with so much power, with so much pleasure, and with so much possibility.
Yes, and we are taking people step by step and meeting them where they are, even if they are just starting this journey. So that's why you're going to see we have a section that is a section that stays there and it's not gonna be changed. It's a section that is frequently asked questions. So it's the ABC of perimenopause and the ABC of menopause. So it's menopause 101 and perimenopause 101. So we have those questions that are staying there. And then the blog keeps being refreshed with new information, with new things. But we know people are coming, and most of the times they need first to get this ABC, the one on what is happening to their bodies.
And I just want to clarify for everyone listening that the site exists in Spanish and English. So even if you're not a Spanish speaker, it is an amazing go-to site for all of the reasons we've just been talking about. So tell us, where do listeners go to find menopausia.com? Do they just go to menopausia.com,
Yeah,
right? They just type it in.
menopausia.com, and they can choose between English and Spanish. When they enter menopausia.com, it's going to be in Spanish, but they can switch to English. It has exactly the same information. You're not losing information. We don't have less articles. We don't have less information. It's a perfect mirror because that's what we wanted. We wanted for both universe to have the same level of love and attention. They can follow us on Instagram, menopausia.com. So menopausia.com. And so we really would love to connect in social media as well. And then my personal Instagram is Gaby Natale at GABYNATALE.
So I want to do a shout out also to your YouTube channel where all of the library of inspiring and powerful speeches that you've given throughout your media career. They're bite-sized videos, right? A reinvention, how to break barriers. They're great not only for menopause, but they're great if you want to step into an entrepreneurial path or step into a new leadership path. I love that library of YouTube videos. So thank you so much, Gaby, for all of your power, your voice, your advocacy that you're putting into the menopause space. We so need you in this space. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. And thanks to you, Gabriela. I want to be transparent with your audience that I met Gabriela earlier this year, and she has been such an amazing advocate to connect people in the menosphere, to tell you should know this person, you should meet this other person. So you've been incredibly generous, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Oh, well, I don't gatekeep anything because more women need this information. And I'm willing to give as much information out to everyone to really, again, to destigmatize this life phase because it really can be a very powerful stage of life. And menopausia.com is the destination to really embody that. So thank you again, Gaby. Thank you for being here.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Pleasure in the Pause. Want to help me spread more pleasure in the world? Please hit subscribe to the podcast and share this episode with a friend, a sister, or any woman you care about. Because when we share these conversations, we remind each other that we are not alone. Together, we create ripples of empowerment and support that reach far beyond ourselves. And your support means the world to me. Thank you. Remember, your pleasure matters.